In the freezing streets of Seattle, a Marine veteran searched for the daughter he lost years ago. But when he finally found her behind the walls of a wealthy mansion, he uncovered a truth darker than any battlefield he had ever faced. A child trapped in silence, a home filled with secrets, and a love too powerful to erase. With his loyal German shepherd by his side, John must challenge the shadows of cruelty that hide behind riches and perfection. As the storm rages, hearts break, and faith is pushed to its limits, he learns that God's greatest miracles are often hidden in a father's relentless love. If you believe that no child deserves to suffer and that faith can still save families, do not scroll away. Hit subscribe, share, and comment Amen to help spread this story of hope, courage, and redemption. May the Lord bless and protect everyone watching this video. Autumn in Colorado often arrived like a warning. The sky was a faded gray blanket stretched over the rugged mountains and endless pine forests, carrying the sharp scent of cold wind and the silence of an approaching winter. The town of Evergreen sat quietly along the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, where cabins leaned into the woods as if seeking warmth from the trees. The bitter air scratched at the skin, and every gust seemed to whisper loneliness. In a modest wooden cabin near the tree line lived John Miller, a 42-year-old former United States Marine who had once served in difficult combat missions overseas. His body bore the history of those battles through broad shoulders, a strong jaw marked by a faint scar on the right side, and hands that looked like they could bend steel. His short dark brown hair had begun to thread with gray too early for his age. His hazel eyes, deep and thoughtful, reflected the exhaustion of a man who had fought too many wars, not all of them on foreign soil. The hardest war he ever faced was losing his family. John had once been a warm man with an easy laugh, softened by the presence of his beloved wife, Anna. She had been small and gentle, with a smile capable of calming even his worst nights. When cancer took her away, his world collapsed. Amid the storm of grief, something even crueler happened. Their 5-year-old daughter, Emma, disappeared in the chaos. Social workers placed her somewhere for temporary care, but paperwork errors and a sudden relocation caused her to vanish from the system. In the dark spiral that followed, John blamed himself every single day. The silence of the cabin reminded him constantly of the laughter that once filled it, and the unfinished crayon drawings still taped to the refrigerator screamed louder than any battlefield memory ever had. His only companion in recent years had been Max, a 4-year-old German shepherd with a strong, muscular build, a thick coat of black and tan fur, intelligent brown eyes, and an unwavering loyalty to John. Max had been trained as a military working dog, but after an injury during service, he was retired early. John adopted Max not only because they shared the same scars of service, but because Max understood loss without needing words. The dog had a calm but protective demeanor, always alert, always watching over John like a guardian. Together they had spent years searching for Emma, traveling from one lead to another, from state to state, hope flickering like a weak candle that stubbornly refused to go out. This morning, John stood on the cabin's small porch, staring at the frozen breath escaping his lips. He wore an old olive-green military jacket, its edges frayed, yet it fit him perfectly, as though it carried the weight of every decision he had ever made. Max sat by his side, ears perked forward, sensing something different in John today. A manila envelope lay in John's hand. Inside was the first real lead he had received in years. A private investigator, whom John had hired with the last of his savings, had sent him an address. The file stated, Emma Miller, legally adopted by Charles and Victoria Thompson, Seattle, Washington. The Thompsons were described as wealthy, high-profile business owners who lived in one of the city's most luxurious neighborhoods. The investigator's note was short but powerful. She is safe. She looks healthy. But there are things that do not add up. John read those lines at least 100 times. Safe. Healthy. But something else hidden beneath that surface. He felt his heartbeat stumble. He had always feared that if Emma was found, she might already have forgotten him. Or worse, she might hate the man who failed to keep their family together. Still, he would rather stand outside her world and watch from afar than never know joy had returned to her life. John looked down at Max. "Time to go, buddy," he whispered, his deep voice cracking with emotion he tried to bury. Max pressed his head against John's leg, as though acknowledging the importance of the journey ahead. Inside the cabin, John moved with purpose. He packed lightly, extra clothing, a photo of Emma at age 5 with curly light brown hair and bright blue eyes, his wife's necklace that Emma used to hold whenever she felt scared, Max's chew toy, a few cans of food, and an old map of Washington State. He hesitated when he saw the map. A thought shot through his chest like lightning. What if she does not want to see me? He clenched his jaw, forced the fear into silence, and continued packing. They set off in John's beat-up 2005 Ford truck, its paint chipped and engine growling like an aging beast. The 1,000-mile journey stretched ahead, long highways cutting through vast emptiness, truck stops, and cities that blurred into memories. Max rested his head on John's lap during quiet stretches, reminding him he was not alone. Day after day, John drove, stopping only when necessary. He replayed old memories of Emma in his mind, her giggles, the way she used to run into his arms with absolute trust, the tiny footprints she left in fresh snow outside the cabin. His heart ached so intensely, it felt like another wound that would never fully heal. As they crossed into Washington, the weather changed. Rain replaced snow, tapping on the windshield like impatient fingers. The roads were slick and reflective, and the towering evergreens lining the highway stood tall and dark under the storm clouds. The city skyline appeared at last, Seattle's iconic Space Needle piercing the gray heavens above. John's chest tightened as he navigated through traffic lights and busy intersections filled with people who looked like they had never known such sorrow. Eventually, he reached a gated community where large houses sat behind manicured hedges and security cameras glimmered like unblinking eyes. He parked far away, careful not to draw attention. Through the fence, he saw a mansion with pristine white walls and tall windows. A marble fountain decorated the entrance, water flowing like luxury itself. Max sniffed the air, alert and tense. Then John froze. In the backyard garden, a little girl about 9 years old walked slowly, holding a book against her chest. Her soft brown hair reached her shoulders now. Her blue eyes reflected both intelligence and sadness. She looked so much like Anna that John's knees almost gave out. It was Emma. His Emma. She appeared healthy, well-dressed, but a loneliness clung to her like a shadow, plainly visible even from afar. John swallowed hard. He felt both relief and heartbreak attacking him at once. She was alive. She was safe. She was right there. Yet a tall iron fence felt like the widest ocean ever existed between them. He whispered in a trembling voice, "I found you, baby girl." Max pressed closer, sensing the emotions bursting through John like a dam. The sky darkened as rain intensified, soaking the earth. John's clothes grew damp, but he did not care. He stood absolutely still, afraid even the smallest movement would make the moment disappear. For the first time in years, hope did not feel like a lie. Yet deep inside that hope, a quiet question emerged, sharp and chilling. If she looks so well cared for, why does she seem so sad? John watched from the shadows, unsure whether he should stay or walk away, while Max leaned forward, nose pointed toward the girl they had crossed the country to find. John remained near the outskirts of the gated neighborhood, choosing to observe from a safe distance so as not to disturb or confuse his daughter. He rented a small room above an old service station several blocks away. The room smelled of gasoline and dust, the walls stained from years of neglect, but it offered a clear view of the road leading to the Thompsons' mansion. At night, the city lights reflected in the rain puddles, while gloomy clouds loomed overhead like silent judges. Max lay on the worn-out floorboards, wide awake and alert, always listening for the subtle clues the world offered. The next morning, John followed the schedule of the house quietly. A black luxury SUV rolled through the iron gates, driven by a stern-looking chauffeur named Robert. He appeared to be in his mid-50s, tall and sharply built, his graying beard trimmed with military precision. His dark uniform fit perfectly, suggesting strict discipline and a long career serving wealthy families. Although he tried to maintain a cold and professional expression, the faint kindness in his brown eyes hinted that he did not fully approve of everything happening within that mansion. In the back seat of the vehicle, John spotted Emma wearing a pristine school uniform, a navy blazer, a white shirt neatly buttoned, and a pleated skirt that reached her knees. Her hair, now smoother and styled with a ribbon, framed a face that looked tense rather than joyful. She held a backpack on her lap with both hands as if it were a shield. John felt his heart twist while watching her disappear down the street. Later that afternoon, John saw a woman step onto the balcony of the mansion. This was Victoria Thompson, Emma's adoptive mother. She was tall and slender, her golden blonde hair tied in a flawless bun. Her wardrobe seemed designed for magazine covers, silk blouses, diamond earrings that sparkled under the cloudy sky, and high heels even inside her own home. Her beauty was striking, yet her ice-blue eyes held an emotionless chill. She stood with her arms crossed, surveying the world beneath her, as though she expected perfection from everything she owned. Beside her appeared Charles Thompson, the adoptive father. He was around 50, physically imposing with broad shoulders and an expensive tailored suit, perfectly complementing his bronzed skin and slicked-back dark hair. His sharp blue eyes were identical to Victoria's in their coldness. Everything about him suggested control, power, and intolerance for weakness. He had built his wealth through aggressive corporate takeovers, gaining fame as a ruthless businessman whose decisions often destroyed smaller companies. The public admired his success, but his employees whispered of his temper and impossible expectations. As evening settled, John watched the lights turn off in most of the house except for a single window upstairs, Emma's room. He stayed hidden behind the trees, Max beside him, soaking in the subtle night sounds. Suddenly, Max's ears perked up. He let out a low whine, signaling distress. Through the quiet, John began to hear it too. The soft, muffled sound of a child crying. His pulse quickened. Emma was alone in her room, trying to silence her sobs. All the luxury surrounding her meant nothing when tears filled her nights. The next day, driven by worry, John moved closer to the property. He positioned himself behind a row of trimmed bushes, keeping Max close. The sound of Emma being reprimanded echoed faintly from inside the house. Victoria's voice rose sharply. "Perfection, Emma. We expect nothing less." A loud thud followed, possibly a thrown object slamming against furniture. Emma's frightened apology pierced John's core like a blade. Later, the family prepared for a social outing. A new character entered the scene, a private governess named Sarah Collins. Sarah was in her early 30s, average height, with long chestnut brown hair tied loosely behind her back. She wore understated but elegant clothing, a knee-length wool coat and modest boots. Her warm brown eyes contrasted sharply with the cold expressions of her employers. When she spoke to Emma, her voice softened, and a gentle hand brushed the girl's shoulder as if trying to offer comfort she could not openly show. John noticed fear etched within Sarah's gaze. She knew more than she was allowed to say. John's fists clenched as he observed. He had once thought fate might have offered Emma a better life, but now he saw the truth. The mansion was a prison disguised as privilege. Emma's room, decorated with expensive ornaments and plush furniture, was only a display case. Emma herself was the trophy. That night, John and Max kept watch once more. When the moonlight broke through the clouds, John saw Emma sitting by her window, knees hugged tightly to her chest, her face glowing pale with sadness. Her gaze drifted toward the outside world, toward the freedom she did not have. Max nudged John's arm, urging action, but John hesitated. He needed proof. He needed a way to protect her legally, permanently. Storming into the house would only get him arrested and push Emma further from him. Yet something else happened that fueled his resolve. Sarah secretly stepped into Emma's room later, embracing the girl in a protective hug. The governess whispered words that John could not hear, but Sarah's heartbreaking expression revealed everything. Emma was not happy here, and the danger was real, maybe worse than John had imagined. The chapter ends as John stands beneath the cold night sky, watching his daughter suffer behind locked windows and realizing that the battle for her happiness had only just begun. Max pressed against him, loyal and ready, as though reminding John that some wars require planning, patience, and the perfect moment to strike. The storm arrived suddenly, sweeping across Seattle with violent winds that rattled street signs and pounded heavy snow against rooftops. The mansion's security lights flickered through the blizzard, casting long, distorted shadows onto the frozen ground. John stood hidden behind a stone wall, wrapped in his worn military jacket, his breath steaming as he tried to see through the swirling white haze. Max remained at his side, muscles tense, ears pricked, ready for danger. Through the second-floor window, the scene unfolded like a nightmare he could not wake from. Emma stood trembling in the center of her room, still wearing her school uniform, while Victoria hovered over her like a storm within a storm. The adoptive mother shouted words John could not fully hear, but the rage was unmistakable. Victoria shoved a report card in Emma's face, pointing at a single imperfect grade highlighted in red ink. She grabbed the girl's arm, shaking her violently for daring to fall short of expectations. Emma's soft cry carried into the night, slicing through John's heart. His fists curled into hammers, the Marine inside him begging to break through the window and end this torment. Instead, he remained still, teeth grinding, knowing that one reckless move could cost him his daughter forever. Victoria's anger escalated. She struck Emma across the cheek with a sharp slap that echoed even through the storm, then pushed the girl toward a small room adjacent to her bedroom. The door slammed shut with a metallic thud, and a lock clicked firmly into place. The lights inside that small confinement flickered once before going dark. Max let out a deep, furious bark, the kind that came from instinct and loyalty. John placed a trembling hand on Max's neck, whispering urgently to keep quiet. His rage threatened to consume him, but he forced himself to stay hidden. He needed proof. He needed allies. The wind howled against the walls, yet Emma's quiet sobbing somehow sounded louder than the storm. John's chest ached with helplessness. When the lights in the mansion finally dimmed and silence returned, John knew he could not wait any longer. He circled the property's perimeter until he found the side entrance where deliveries were made. A small figure stepped outside holding a trash bag. It was the housekeeper. Her name, as John would soon learn, was Maria Sanchez. Maria was a woman in her late 40s, shorter in height, with a round figure that spoke of years of physical labor. Her black hair, streaked with gray, was tied back tightly, and her tired brown eyes revealed a lifetime of resilience. She wore a simple navy uniform and thick gloves, clearly accustomed to the cold. John emerged from the shadows, careful not to frighten her. "Please," he said quietly, his voice rough but earnest. "I need to know about the girl, Emma." Maria froze for a moment, frightened, glancing back toward the house as though the walls themselves were listening. Max stepped forward, his presence powerful but calm. The dog's intelligent eyes scanned the woman, reassuring rather than threatening. Maria recognized the protective bond between man and dog and relaxed slightly. "You are her father," she whispered, not as a question, but as a certainty. John nodded, his voice breaking as he replied, "Yes, I am." Maria's expression softened with empathy and sorrow. She checked the door again before speaking more openly. "Emma is a sweet child, too sweet. They do not deserve her." She explained that the Thompsons had adopted Emma for status. They paraded her in public as a symbol of their charity and perfection, but behind closed doors, they demanded absolute excellence. Any mistake, no matter how small, was punished. Victoria believed discipline created success. Charles expected achievements that matched the family's reputation. Neither showed affection, only control. Maria's hands trembled as she revealed the truth. They planned to send her away. A boarding school far from here. No phone, no contact. They want to make her into something she is not. John felt his heartbeat slam into his ribs. Losing Emma once had nearly destroyed him. Losing her again, without ever being able to see her smile, would finish what grief had started. Maria continued, guilt heavy in her voice. "I help Emma when I can. Extra blankets, a warm drink, a hug when nobody sees." She lifted a hand to wipe a tear. "She asks about her real father sometimes. She remembers your voice when she falls asleep." Those words hit John harder than any combat wound. His eyes burned, but he remained steady. He asked Maria if she would be willing to testify or help him gather evidence. Fear clouded her face instantly. "If they find out, I lose my job, and they will destroy me. Charles, he has power, many friends in high places." The hesitation was understandable, but John saw something change in her eyes when she looked at Max. The dog stared back with fierce determination, as if reminding her that courage takes many forms. Finally, Maria nodded once. "I will help. For Emma." She quickly gave John a small flash drive from her pocket, something she had been secretly collecting. Photos, voice recordings, and documentation of Emma's punishments. Evidence of emotional and physical harm that no judge could ignore. It felt like a lifeline. John thanked her with every ounce of gratitude he possessed. Maria hurried back inside, leaving John and Max alone in the relentless storm. The snow piled upon John's shoulders, but he barely felt the cold. Max pressed his head against John's leg once more, as if saying, "We are close. Do not give up now." John stared at the mansion's cold windows, his resolve solidifying like ice. He had waited years for this moment. Now he had the truth. Now he had a chance. The path ahead would not be easy, but he would face any danger, break through any door, to save his daughter from the prison that pretended to be a home. The storm returned with greater fury, coating Seattle in thick sheets of wind-driven snow. The city seemed to disappear beneath the white chaos, and only the mansion's headlights pierced through the swirling night. John waited in the cold shadows, knowing something terrible was about to happen. Max growled low in his throat, sensing danger long before it emerged. Then the front doors burst open. Charles Thompson stepped out first, wrapped in a black wool coat tailored to perfection. Yet his stiff posture and angled jaw revealed impatience. His perfectly styled dark hair gleamed under the porch lights, unaffected by the storm. Behind him, Victoria guided Emma with a firm grip on her wrist, her diamond earrings flashing like cold stars. Emma wore a backpack and a winter coat much too thin for the brutal weather. Her eyes were red and puffy from the previous night's ordeal. A third person followed them, a young man in his late 20s named Lewis Carter. He was a private security guard hired for the occasion, tall with a toned build and short sandy blonde hair. His face was clean-shaven, almost too fresh for the hard job he performed, but his deep-set gray eyes revealed caution and inner conflict. Lewis obeyed orders because he needed the money. Growing up in poverty taught him to survive by compliance. He opened the back door of the black SUV, urging Emma inside with a strained, apologetic expression. John's heart stopped for a beat before racing into overdrive. This was it. They were sending Emma away. Forever. The thought struck him like a physical blow. Max stiffened, ready to charge, but John signaled for patience. He needed a precise moment. The SUV rolled away from the house, tires grinding over snow and ice. John followed at a distance in his rusty Ford truck, headlights dimmed, Max sitting upright with intense focus. The wind screamed around them, shaking both vehicles. Snow plastered against the windshield, making visibility nearly zero. Yet John pushed forward. He would not lose Emma again. Ahead, the SUV slowed near an icy bend. Max suddenly barked sharply, his instinct catching something unseen. John trusted him completely. He pulled over, unlatched the passenger door, and Max jumped out into the storm. The German Shepherd ran ahead, swift and determined, positioning himself directly in the road. Lewis saw the dog first. His eyes widened and he slammed the brakes. The SUV skidded violently, fishtailing on black ice before coming to a halt just inches from Max. Chaos erupted. Victoria shouted in terror, Charles cursed angrily, and Emma pressed her hands to the window, eyes filled with hope rather than fear. John leapt from the truck and sprinted toward the SUV. His boots sank into the fresh snow, but adrenaline propelled him forward. Louis stepped out to confront him, his breath shaking in the cold. "Stay back," Louis warned, trying to sound authoritative, but his voice cracked with uncertainty. John saw the hesitation. He knew Louis was not cruel, just trapped. "Please," John said, fighting the storm to be heard. "She is my daughter." For a moment, Louis froze, confusion battling obligation. His jaw clenched in decision, but before he could act, Charles threw open the front passenger door and pulled out his phone. His face twisted with fury as he dialed emergency services. "A kidnapping attempt. My daughter is being attacked." Charles lied smooth as ice. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Time was slipping away. John rushed to the back door, his gloves trembling as he yanked it open. Emma stared at him, breath shallow, unsure whether the man in front of her was real or a dream. John quickly pulled a necklace from inside his jacket, shielding it from the snow. The pendant was a small silver locket shaped like a star. Emma had worn it as a toddler, always playing with it between her tiny fingers. John had kept it close since the day she disappeared. He pressed it into her hands now, his voice raw. "Your mom gave this to you. You used to touch it every night before bed. You said it kept the bad dreams away." Emma gasped as memories flooded back. She opened the locket. Inside was a tiny picture of her as a baby, nestled in Anna's arms. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Daddy!" Her small voice shattered the storm. John embraced her, holding her as though the earth itself might collapse if he let go. Max barked in triumph beside them. Louis and Victoria stood frozen, whether from shock or fear, it was unclear. Charles charged toward them, waving his phone, yelling that the police would arrive any second and arrest John. He grabbed Emma's arm, but Max stepped in with a warning growl, teeth bared, muscles ready to protect. Charles stumbled back, suddenly stripped of his confidence. Victoria clung to him, eyes wide with disbelief that their control was slipping. John looked into Emma's eyes. "Do you want to leave with me?" Emma nodded through tears. The decision was hers now, not theirs. John scooped her into his arms and dashed back toward the truck with Max guarding their escape. Snow swallowed the road behind them as they sped away. Sirens blared closer, chasing them like wolves through the storm. John's heart pounded with fear and exhilaration, but one truth was clear. Emma remembered him. She chose him. No matter what came next, father and daughter were united again under the same sky, bonded by love stronger than any lie the Thompsons had built. Morning light crept through the frosted windows of the courthouse, but the warmth it carried failed to reach John's trembling hands. He sat at a long wooden table in a cold courtroom, wearing his best jacket, which was still just a worn, neatly brushed version of his everyday clothes. His rugged features, tired eyes, and the deep scar along his jaw made him appear hardened, yet there was a quiet vulnerability behind his determined stare. Max sat obediently at John's feet, a 4-year-old German shepherd with alert brown eyes and a muscular posture, radiating protective loyalty. Emma sat between them, holding tight to John's arm, her gentle face still marked by a faint bruise beneath her left eye, a painful reminder of what she had endured. Across the room sat Charles and Victoria Thompson, impeccably dressed in designer winter attire that contrasted sharply with the emotional wreckage they had left behind. Charles adjusted his tie repeatedly, his stiff posture revealing irritation at having his authority questioned. Victoria kept her chin raised, icy blue eyes flashing with indignation, as if the proceedings were a mere inconvenience. The judge entered. Honorable Miriam Davenport, a woman in her late 50s, possessed a strong presence. Her silver hair was cut in a short, neat style that framed her intelligent, dark eyes. Wrinkles on her face reflected years of tough decisions. Her reputation was known for fairness, but also for harsh judgment when children's safety was involved. She settled into her seat, gaze shifting with sharp evaluation from one side of the court to the other. A social worker named Daniel Brooks stood to speak first. Daniel was a gentle-looking man in his early 40s with a slightly rounded build, curly brown hair, and soft green eyes framed by rectangular glasses. His voice was calm but carried conviction. He summarized the evidence. Maria's recorded testimonies, photos documenting Emma's injuries, school counselor reports showing signs of emotional distress, and medical examinations confirming physical harm. Maria herself sat nervously behind Daniel, clutching a small cross around her neck. She gathered immense courage to be here, and her worried expression betrayed fear of retaliation from the Thompsons. But her loyalty to Emma gave her strength. Victoria burst out in protest, claiming that Emma was clumsy and emotional, exaggerating trivial issues. Charles added his argument with a forceful voice that reverberated off the walls, painting himself and his wife as victims of betrayal by ungrateful help and a deranged ex-soldier. However, each word seemed to push the judge further away from sympathy. When John was called to testify, he rose slowly, shoulders squared. He spoke with a deep, steady voice, recounting his search for Emma across states, spending every dollar he had, clinging to hope even when grief seemed endless. He described his wife Anna, Emma's mother, and how they always promised to give Emma a life full of love, no matter their hardships. The courtroom fell silent when John revealed the locket Emma had recognized on the night of the rescue. It sparkled under the lights like a piece of his heart laid bare for all to see. Emma was asked gently if she wished to share her feelings. She stood, small hands gripping the witness stand, voice soft yet brave. She said she remembered her father's voice, the stories he used to tell her, and how she always felt safe when Max curled up near her feet. She confessed to being terrified every day in the Thompson house. When she looked at John, tears shimmered in her bright blue eyes. "He's my daddy," she whispered. "I want to go home with him." Silence wrapped the room in a powerful stillness. Victoria looked furious. Charles stunned into silence. The judge took a deep breath and began delivering her verdict, each word a lifeline. She stated that Emma's emotional well-being had been severely compromised in the Thompson household, and the evidence showed neglect and abuse masked behind wealth. Her voice rang with finality. John Miller is granted full legal custody of his daughter, Emma Miller. The flood of relief struck John like a tidal wave. He exhaled a shaky breath as Emma rushed into his arms, burying her face in his chest. Max barked happily, tail wagging in pure celebration. Tears fell freely down John's cheeks, yet his smile glowed with triumph and gratitude. The Thompsons left the courtroom with clenched jaws and simmering fury, but no amount of money or influence could alter what had been decided. Maria approached John with tears of joy and thanked him for giving Emma the life she deserved. John grasped her hand with sincere appreciation, recognizing her bravery. Days later, John and Emma moved into a cozy wooden house near a quiet forest. The air was crisp and clean, and winter sunlight sparkled like diamonds on fresh snow. The home was small but warm, crackling with life as John lit the fireplace each evening. Emma decorated her room with simple things she loved: drawings, books, and a framed photo of her mother smiling. Max patrolled the yard during the day, nose deep in the snow, enjoying the freedom of nature. One afternoon, laughter filled the fresh air as Emma ran through the snowy field, Max chasing her joyfully, barking with excitement. John watched from the porch, a cup of hot chocolate warming his hands, his lips curving into a peaceful smile. For the first time in years, he felt whole. The fire inside the cabin glowed like hope reborn. Family had found its way back together. They were finally home. Sometimes, God's greatest miracles are not loud or dazzling. They come quietly, through the love of a father who refuses to give up, through the loyalty of a faithful dog, and through the courage of a child who still believes in hope. When life grows cold and storms rise against us, remember that God walks beside those who choose love, even when the path is painful. Every sunrise is a reminder that the Lord never abandons His children. If you believe that family, faith, and unconditional love can overcome any darkness, please share this story with someone who needs a light today. Comment Amen to spread hope. Subscribe to join us in more journeys of faith, and may God bless and protect every viewer who watches this message.